Today I want to kind of explore a topic that has really been on my mind lately. Have you noticed how that even though in the past America has been able to overcome every obstacle, we could rise up to meet any challenge, we could make the supply chains happen? I mean, good Lord, look at World War II. You know, they had the women come to the factories, they put everybody to work, they rose up to meet a challenge. And suddenly we have not enough meat. Suddenly we don't have enough vegetables. Suddenly the FDA is faking all their numbers. Suddenly the climate change from the grand solar minimum is threatening to put us into starvation. Suddenly there's supply shortages across the economy from these companies. And it seems to be every company. So what's really going on here? Well, if you look behind this a little bit, you'll find that every major company, whether it's a media outlet, a pharmaceutical, the housing industry, banks, Amazon. Amazon, you think, hey, we're competing with Alibaba. Oh no, look down here. The shareholders of these companies are all Vanguard and BlackRock. Black should tell you a lot about what's being said there. Basically the fourth arm of the American government, the unauthorized arm. They're buying up houses at an unbelievable pace. Their money is in controlling interest or highly influencing interest of every media out there. There is no competition between Amazon and Alibaba or Coke and Pepsi. No, they're all basically controlled and owned by the same 2 or 3 companies, which are owned or controlled by the same 1 or 2 people at the very top. You know, it's not good enough that they have 200 zeros behind one of their bank accounts. So they generate all of these supply issues. You know, like California, oh, it's a drought, we got to turn off the food, we got to turn off the ranching and the farming, and then, oh, and we got 3 aquifers so full of snow melt, we've got more water than ever before, but hey, we need to tear those things out to restore the ecosystem, and we're just going to drain all that water into the ocean. You know, we could problem solve, but no, we're going to do exactly the wrong thing. And that's the way they're running the show. If you notice, everything that's being done is exactly wrong. Why is that? Well, it's because it's one controlling interest. And everything that you and I typically get is from those controlling interests. So we need to begin to have the ability to respond. That is, to take responsibility. And in order to do that, we've got to, at the very least, meet our basic needs. I encourage buying land, you know, building your own home. And of course, we teach AirCrete alternative building, where you can build a AirCrete house made out of inflated cement. It's been inflated 6 times to provide insulation and structure. You can build it for $28 to $38 a square foot or up, depending on how much you put into it to finish it. But that gives you a foundation to begin to stand on. And if that's something that interests you, of course, I invite you to click the link below in the description to find out more about our workshops and our video course, our Trilingual School of Alternative Building. And then I have to get you to think about generating value. How do you generate money when you're used to working for someone, when it's always been someone else's responsibility to make the money, make the product, and then you exchange your time at a greatly depreciated rate for what you get in return? You've got to learn how to be the provider of your own value. If all you can do is walk a dog, maybe you have to live in a suburban area so you can be near people who need that service. But typically, I find that when we really start to separate ourselves from the media, MEDEA, the goddess of contriving, and we don't have all the socialist media that's being controlled by the same companies, blotting out everything that doesn't support the party line, then the thoughts in our head actually become our own thoughts instead of noise bouncing around from friends and relatives and the news constantly telling you until you get this urge inside of you to burst out and go get the prick. You know, when you isolate yourself from that and you get your own thoughts, you find that you do have a value to bring. And it may be something as simple as making music, and that may seem ridiculous, but in this world, you could direct market that music to me. We can build counter and alternative economies to buy from one another, because I would much rather buy from a man who has a timber mill, for example, than to buy from the soulless corpse. Even if I got to pay more to support a man and his family, I would rather do that. But what we also find is that often that actually brings really good value, because when you eliminate all the people who just take, all the middle people who don't produce anything with their lives and their businesses except that service of stealing the value that a person produces and marking it up exponentially and selling it to another person, then for example, some of the milk farmers that I personally know, they were at 20 cents a gallon at one point, and they couldn't pay the mortgage. So they sold off their hundreds of milk cows, and they cut it down to 17 cows. They milked them in a small milking operation and sold it directly to the customer at $6 a gallon. And it was wholesome, it was natural, and they made more money than they've ever made their whole life. So it became a deal for me, and it became a deal for them. They profited, and I profited in getting a good product and knowing where it came from. So we have value to bring, and you've got to start thinking about what that value is that you can bring. Music, we love music. Art, we love music. We love that. If somebody roasts coffee beans, if somebody roast yaupon leaves to provide a caffeine substitute, then these things are all of value. There's the story of the man who had a pond with water lilies. He did his best to kill them, and he could never eliminate these ridiculous flowers. And then one day somebody came by and offered him $1 a piece for the little seed pods. And before he knew it, he was making $50,000 a year out of these little ponds on his property, just selling these lotus flower pods to various flower arrangers and other people who had an interest in that particular thing that to him was a problem. And the point being that we've got to think outside the box. We've got to begin to look for our value to bring to the world. And in that, we'll find the richness of life. But of course, in order to truly do that and do it well, we've got to break the burden. We've got to buy a piece of land, even if it's not ideal. We've got to do what's possible. We've got to get on the land. We've got to build a structure and not just pay someone else our fortune in 30 years of our life to pay to a banker to only be the tenant and not the actual owner if you read the contract. We've got to be able to solve our base needs. Maybe we begin to grow food, or maybe we begin to trade with other farmers and other people in our counter economy for the things that we need. We've got to begin getting everything we need in an alternative manner, because as long as everything we have comes from the same 2 or 3 companies under the same 1 or 2 controlling hands, we are at the mercy of them magically creating a supply shortage, or starting yet another war, or starting another financial crash. And it is entirely possible to put ourselves in a position outside of that to where we have security. And oh, what a feeling that is, to have a sense of accomplishment and a sense of security living in your own house, providing your own income, not having to punch any clock, not having to do anything. But let's be real. This may in fact require that we change our life. This may in fact require that we change the way we think, that we need a certain size house, that we need to live in a certain city, that we have to make a certain amount of money, that we have to work a job, that we have to have the newest of anything, that we have to buy everything new from the store. So we've got to regain our minds by turning off the contriving media. We've got to gather our thoughts, find the value that we have to bring to the world. We've got to build our homes on our own land. And we've got to learn to stand up for ourselves in a legal manner. We've got to learn how to put everything into the private, into a non-private, unincorporated, nonprofit association, for example. We've got to break the bonds that bind us to a system that now has taken so much that the only thing left of value is to take our very minds and our souls. So that's just something for you to consider. Look around you, look at the shortages, look at all the contriving and the manufacturing of false shortages going on. And maybe some of those shortages are even real, but those are outside of your control. You don't have the ability to respond. It's time to take responsibility. It's time for freedom. It's time to live and be what we truly are.